before we unpack these promos, and because I love talking to you guys about this kind of stuff, I just want to put it out there, man. The kind of conversations that I'm seeing about these promos, which the promos I've selected, by the way, I've seen a lot of feedback and a lot of back and forth amongst these fans. But in my opinion, a lot of it is disingenuous. And a lot of it is I'm pro WWE, so I'm going to crap all over this one. Or I'm pro AEW, and I'm going to crap all over this one. So, Adelaide, I'm going to start off with you, man. What's up with that?
You hit on it. It's tribalism at its best, right? It's what I mean. We've all done it. We've all hit a certain point in our life where we look at the other company or the other side, and we're like, well, they're not doing it as good as this guy, this company that I dedicate all my life to. And at some point, you just reach this point where like good is good. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. Where it could be an indie company, it could be a streaming show that you know mystery wrestling up in Canada that Evil Uno's running has some really cool angles right now. This is just on a bigger stage, and I can appreciate it for what it is. And when I see it devolve into this overinflated, you know, comparison, I guess, for lack of a better word, it doesn't hold water for me, because if you're truly a fan, you're seeing the goods, the positive in both feuds. I'm partial to the Swerve Hangman feud just because I've been following it more closely, and I've seen that through line early on where they were kind of, early on showing some planting some seeds and showing some elements, and just knowing that Swerve is a real great wrestler and a planner, a storyteller. Hangman has proven he's a storyteller in other feuds, and to see that. Whereas the Punk feud, I think that one was more overcharged just because of the representations that Punk had coming in and coming back, right? And you already had a set of fans who were adamant, like, I don't like this guy, I don't like how he left. Or the other side who said, I love this guy because of where he came from and what he stands for hating that other side. So I think it's silly. I like what I like, and I'm willing to give anything a chance. Do I have thoughts on how effective it's been or how both have like materialized? Sure. But that doesn't take away my enjoyment from it. I don't like getting into these silly, again, tribalistic feuds, so to speak.
That's fair. That's fair. Those are good points. Greg, man, my question to you: you've been a wrestling fan majority all of your life, right? And I know when I was growing up here in Atlanta, we had friends that were just WCW.
Mm-hmm.
They could care less about WWF.
Mm-hmm.
But we also had friends here in Atlanta that were all in on WWF. They could care less about WCW. So you're familiar with that. In fact, you've seen different errors of this kind of someone against another group. That sort of weird deal. My question to you, I'm asking for your wisdom, by the way. how do you handle that? How do you handle tribalism?
So it's interesting. I'm going to go back deeper than WCW,
Okay.
because while you had the WCW WWE thing, right? You did have true. And if you ever listen to Bruce Pritchard, he talks about there were WWE fans who did not know WCW. That's
Right.
a fact.
That's a fact.
But if you go back, let's go back. But prior to WCW, you had the NWA. That's when you had more tribalism. You
Mm,
had the people who were more
Yeah.
Crockett, and they were like, "Yo, this is real wrestling."
yeah.
And they positioned themselves as, we're real wrestlers. We're not cartoon. And you had that. If you think about AEW, WWE today, you had NWA, WWF. WWF was much more overproduced, cartoony, family, and you had this gritty. We knew week in and week out, you're going to get the better matches in NWA.
Mm.
I remember a special one time here in Atlanta, and it was mainstream TV, and they were contrasting the Blue Blazer against Great Muta.
What?
Because you think about your two high flyers. You got to think about
Right.
back then, they were talking about, well, WWF has this guy who's the Blue Blazer, and he does this, this, and this. And they're like, but look at this guy. And so it was like, this dude's better. This dude does more stuff. This dude, and it was kind of interesting to see that. So you had tribalism then. And I think as it goes along, you have people who just didn't want that mainstream. And now you ask, how do you handle it? Let me ask you, I'm going to go back because I know you're a hip hop head. At one point, everybody's like, Def Jam, Def Jam, Def Jam. And then it becomes big and like, I don't like Def Jam no more. It was Cube. Cube had America's Most. Cube had, Death Certificate. Cube was, anti-NWA, all that. And then all of a sudden he becomes big. Now, I don't like Cube no more. That's WWE. WWE is that big time. WWE becomes that Metallica. WWE becomes that Cube. WWE becomes that rock band that I loved when they were here, but now they became too big. I don't like you anymore. Now let me go find my other independent rock band, and I go, and now I build them up. Now I'm like, I love. And I don't know whoever it be. I mean, at one point it was Nickelback, right? Everybody, Nickelback, and then boom, they blow up. I hate Nickelback, right? And then it was like Pearl Jam, and everybody loved Pearl Jam. Now they blow up. I don't like them anymore. So it's like that to me is what AEW has become. And you think about it for a second. There's people starting to rebel against AEW. And a lot of people think why they rebelling, and it's not all about the storytelling. It's not all about that. It's about, wait a second. You told me you weren't going to bring in all these WWF guys. You told me you weren't going to be WWF light, and now you're trying to be that. Now you're trying to say, we're big, like how big we are. There's a lot of people who are not happy about those Wembley shows. They don't want 80,000 people. They want to keep their company here. They want to. This is my company. Just like people used to look at certain bands and certain artists. That's mine. I want them to play the small clubs. I don't want them to play State Farm. I don't want them to play Mercedes-Benz. I don't want them. What do you mean they're selling out of the stadium now? It happened with Bad Bunny in the States.
Yeah. He's
selling out arenas. I mean, not in arenas. He's selling out stadiums. Now all of a sudden people start rebelling against him. And it's like, he got too big. Oh, that's WWE. Now AEW is going to grow. And now people I think the residual is going to be to an Impact, to an MLW, to somebody else. Tribalism is not going to go away.
No.
But I think when you put it in that perspective that we in America especially love the underdog until they're no longer the underdog.
For sure.
And then we want to break you down. And then we love the comeback story.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a perfect point. And it's just one of those things with tribalism. I know everyone likes to use that word, but it really is weird to me when we're in this time of pro wrestling where you have so many different options everywhere. You damn near have a wrestling show every day of the week at this point. So if you don't like what WWE puts out, guess what? Wednesday you can watch Dynamite. On Friday you can watch Dynamite. You can watch Impact
Collision,
on Friday. You have so many different options. And now with the internet, you can watch these independent shows. You can watch overseas. You have so many options. So it's just so super strange to me how extreme people go to when it comes to this tribalism. Like, why go online to say I hate WWE? Like, don't talk about them. Or I hate AEW. They suck. Don't talk about them, bro. Like, why are you? I hate telling someone to go touch grass because that's played out. But dude, experience the rest of the wrestling world. Like, don't dwell in this negative stuff. You can have critique. Hell, we have it on this podcast.
Yeah,
that's why I like these conversations. We don't have to agree on all this stuff. In fact, I don't want that to be the case. But when you walk into a conversation, just looking to just bring up some negative stuff out of nowhere is kind of weird. It's kind of crazy, but that's wrestling fans at this point.
To your point, that's how we've evolved ourselves as wrestling fans, right? We've been around long enough to experience the doldrums of pro wrestling. I don't want to go back to the guest host era of Monday Night Raw. They were terrible, right? There were some gems in there. I love Bob Barker when he was on; it was fun. But by and large, they were terrible because there was nothing else. There was nothing else to motivate that show to be better, right? And now you're in an era where you can discount AEW, you can discount everybody, but you have TNA. You have Impact TNA working in NXT and doing this crazy angle where do we know if they're actually signed? Do we know if they're just, being lent over, or is it, some kind of mishmash? And it's only NXT. It's not on the main show. So it's this cool, I always talk about the golden era, happening now, but we are experiencing it. It just happens to be that the loudest voices online are actually going to be the most upvoted or the most liked because controversy sells no matter where you are. But it's just funny to me to see what you're saying because I don't know what to say to these people anymore. And I don't mean this blanket statement of these people because it could just be one person who just has this very, extremist point of view where by and large most people are just there to enjoy the show. These are just the groups that get attention, and it can be fun to engage with them, but I'm getting to a point where it's just exhausting, and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna enjoy what I like.
The time, man. I don't have the time, bro. I don't have the time, man.
So
exactly.
So I'm gonna give you one other parallel. So I'm a Star Wars fan, and
they're awesome too.
So here's the thing: you got episode 4, 5, and 6, the original 4, 5, and 6. You have people who are very passionate about that, and those people still like 1, 2, and 3 because they're Lucas. But once Disney bought over, there's a whole group of people who hate Disney because that's the big boy.
Absolutely.
They ruined it. No, they made it better. They did more. They did more than what George could do with it. But that's neither here nor there. But you have a group of people who will rip every one of the most newest stuff.
For sure.
They will kill it. And it's not because of the content. They'll say it is. But if you start to ask them questions, they don't dislike it. They just don't like the fact that Disney's the one who's producing it.
Yeah.
And I think what you start to see now is you have a lot of people who are AEW hardcore, and they just don't like it because it's WWE.
Yeah.
And now they have a little bit less. They're trying because it used to be, I'm against Vince. Well, Vince is gone. But now you got a bunch of people who just don't like Tony Khan. And Tony Khan, I'll be honest, has turned me off.
Yeah.
Just AEW for me is like that kid that has potential that you coach, and you sit back and go, dude, if you would just freaking use a little bit of your potential, do you know how good you could be? And it's like I pull for them. I don't want them to go out of business. I want them to have a TV deal because I don't want to see wrestlers out of business.
For sure.
It's bad for the industry if something negative were to happen.
Right.
Horrible. It's horrible for TNA. It's horrible if anybody loses a TV deal. It's bad. But at the same time, it's like, dude, come on, get out of your own way. So it's like I pull for him, but then there's a group of fans that made me like, oh, geez, I don't even want to deal with this stuff.
Right.
So, excuse me, but it's just like that tribalism is not gonna go. It's not gonna go away. But I think so many times we think about it in the pro wrestling thing, but it's in Star Wars, it's in
Sports.
Lord of the Rings, it's in
Kobe LeBron.
Game of Thrones. It's on everything, right? There's so many people who are so blindly loyal to certain things, and no matter what, they're just not gonna open their eyes to it. And I think that's how I deal with it. It's just I have to accept that there's people like that.
That's a fact.
And more often than not, they're the ones who spend the most money.
If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and of course, look us up on socials at Suplex Dinner Club. And be sure to check out our other projects. We talk college football on Dogs versus All Y'all. That's a weekly college football podcast where we don't just talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. We talk about all things college football. The Life and Times pod, which is short for the Life and Times of a Restaurant Lifer podcast, where I have some chill conversations with some cool and interesting people that I've met in my years in the hospitality industry. And of course, check out Talk 'em in the Building. That's a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. It's a fun project, and if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you're into TV and movie reviews, check out Four Corners Cinema with Ari and Adrian, a podcast where two lifelong pro wrestling fans review film and other forms of media that just so happen to have some of our favorite pro wrestlers. The Suplex Dinner Club family is growing, and I would love for you to be a part of it.